Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to present an interesting part of the rebellion of 1857. In this episode, we are going to talk about role of the then Jhajjar Riyasat in the rebellion of 1857. Jhajjar Riyasat in 1857 Haryana was one of the 10 Riyasats. However, it was the biggest one of its time, spread over an area of 1258 square kilometers. It was home to more than 1 lakh population, which lived in two major towns and 295 villages. As you can see on the map, the then Jhajjar Riyasat covers today's districts of Jhajjar, Dadri, Mahendragarh completely, and major parts of rural Delhi, that is the area of Nazafgarh and around, and half of present-day Rewari district. Dadri originally wasn't part of the Riyasat. However, when Nawab of Bahadurgarh Dadri fell in the hard times, he took a big loan from Nawab Jhajjar, which he couldn't return. So to square off the loan, he gave the revenue rights over Dadri part to Nawab Jhajjar. Hence, effectively in 1857, Dadri formed part of Jhajjar Riyasat. As I already brought out, it was spread over 3,258 square kilometers, housed a population of more than 1 lakh. For administrative purposes, it was divided into 6 parganas, that is the parganas of Badli, Jhajjar, Kunti, Narnaul, Bawal, and Connaught. Dadri, in those days, formed the 7th attached pargana. It had 2 major towns, that is Jhajjar and Narnaul, and 1 major fort, that is Connaught Fort, which is nowadays called Mahendragarh. It had 295 villages. In terms of acreage, it had 8 lakh and 5,000 acres. Assessed revenue was 12 lakh rupees. However, realized revenue was 1/4 of that, that is 3 lakh. This was because the preceding century, that is the 19th century, had been very difficult. 18th century, sorry. 18th century had been very difficult for our area. During that period of anarchy, nearly 75% of population had relocated to safer areas, and the villages were abundant. Coming to Jhajjar Riyasat, as I brought out, at that time, at the beginning of the rebellion, it had a standing force of 250 cavalry and 400 infantry. It was ruled by Nawab Abdul Rahman, who was a young man of 26 years, given to leisurely activities and cultural pursuits. In state matters, he was guided by his father-in-law, Ibrahim Ali. Abdul Samad Khan, the real hero of our today's talk, was the commander-in-chief Jhajjar forces. He was a brave man who led his forces personally in number of engagements throughout the rebellion in Delhi and around. As I brought out earlier, at the beginning of rebellion, Jhajjar had a force of 250 Savars and 400 infantry, which was essentially deployed in securing the Nawab's family and the important treasury locations of Connaught and Jhajjar. Besides that, 2 detachments of 50 Savars and 50 infantry soldiers each were deployed with DC Gurgaon and DC Rohtak. In fact, it was the rebellion of Jhajjar detachment which forced the DC Rohtak to run away from Rohtak. Besides the forces which existed at the beginning of rebellion, the Nawab raised a force of 400 infantry and 250 cavalry at a pay of rupees 5 for infantry per month and 20 rupees per month for cavalry, specifically to fight the British during the rebellion. This infantry and cavalry was mainly composed of Jats and Rangats, respectively, however, included a sizable number of other castes as well. For example, Rajputs formed the second largest component of cavalry, while besides Jats, they were Gujars as also some other men in infantry. This force, overall force, was under command of Abdul Samad Khan. On its raising, somewhere around end of May, around 28th, 29th of May, this force moved to Red Fort. And the first task given to this force was to secure the person of King, that is Bahadur Shah Jafar, as also to bring about protocol and order within the principles of Red Fort. And for that purpose, it was located at Mehtab Bagh. For those of us wondering, Mehtab Bagh is a large bagh located inside the Red Fort. It's important to note that Nawab Jhajjar is the only rebel Haryana native prince to place at a corps at the disposal of Emperor at Delhi, which will go on to fight in all the major battles, including one fought at Nasibpur or Narnaul. The first battle this corps fought was on 8 June 1857. The British record it as Battle of Badli Ki Sarai. Those of us who are conversant with Delhi would know that there is a sarai located at People Thala village in northern Delhi near Alipur. This People Thala sarai has been recorded by the British mistakenly as Badli Ki Sarai. This is where the battle took place. This battle was led on the Indian side nominally by one of the prince, that is son of Bahadur Shah Jafar, named Khizr Sultan. However, he ran away at the very beginning of the battle, and effective command of this force was with Abdul Samad Khan. Abdul Samad Khan had deployed his force tactically at a dominating location which couldn't be bypassed by the British for their advance beyond this place. Hence, they were forced to attack it. However, a mix of circumstances led to the defeat of this force, and it fell back to Delhi. After Battle of Badli Ki Sarai, the next important battle which this force fought was Battle of Nazafgarh, which was fought on 25th of August in the area of Nazafgarh Nangli. These are two villages which have now been submerged by the urbanization, with Nazafgarh lying to the south, followed by Nangli to its north, and the present-day Uttam Nagar to its further north. Battle of Nazafgarh was a desperate battle where the Sepoys and the rebels of Jhajjar force fought with outstanding bravery against a large force led by a British officer named Nicholson. The aim of this force, the rebel force, which left Delhi on the previous night, was to intercept a siege train moving to reinforce the British forces at Delhi from Punjab. This reinforcing uh, group was called a siege train. It had heavy artillery pulled by elephants, as also the reinforcing levies raised in Punjab. These were required for the critical upcoming Battle of Delhi. The rebels proposed to intercept and destroy this force somewhere on the then road called GT Road, which is now called National Highway running from Delhi to Ambala. The task was taken up by the Neemach forces, and the Bareilly element was supposed to be in the sport. Here, those of us who may not know, Neemach Brigade was a brigade which was located at Neemach, had rebelled, and moved up to Delhi to join up with the rebels. It was led by General Siddhara Singh and his deputy Hira Singh. They had contributed immensely to the Battle of Delhi, both in terms of their physical involvement as also in terms of the money they gave to the emperor to pay for the salaries and preparations for the battle. The other brigade which had come up to Delhi after rebelling was Bareilly Brigade. It was led by an officer named Bakht Khan. Bakht Khan and Siddhara Singh had professional rivals. And here in the Battle of Nazargarh, the conduct of Bareilly force was not up to the mark, in the sense they moved up to Palam but did not move up to support the Neemach Brigade when it came under attack. However, insofar as Neemach Brigade and the Jhajjar Lancers are concerned, Jhajjar Lancers had joined the Neemach Brigade for this task because the area was new to Neemach Brigade. They had not operated near Delhi. But on the other hand, the Jhajjar forces, the men were local, and Samad Khan had spent his life here, so they were well aware of the area and they were acting as guides for the rebel force. On coming to know of the British coming from Mundka towards Nazargarh, the rebels took up 3 consecutive positions. That is, the first one at Nazargarh village, the second one in an area called Sarai Pakka Bagh, and the third one at Nagli. The Sarai Pakka Bagh lay between these two, that is Nagli and Nazargarh. This was a sarai located in a bagh, the entire thing being surrounded with a wall. Both Siddhara Singh and Abdul Samad Khan during the battle had located themselves here. The position was attacked by the British with 1 European battalion, 1 British battalion, and 1 Punjab battalion, which was raised in Punjab and mainly consists of 6. The Guides Cavalry and 9th Lancers were held in reserve. Mr. Nigam, a well-known historian of the period around independence period, had done a lot of research on this battle, and in the part of his research he had spoken with the villagers, and the villagers had the folk history said that the battle had gone in favor of initially had gone in favor of the rebels. However, this is the time when the Punjab unit played a Trojan horse trick, wherein they approached the rebels at Sarai Pakka Bagh with claims that they, being Indians themselves, were part of them. However, on reaching in the vicinity, they turned around and attacked, which opened up the way for the rest of the British force also to push in the attack. Whatever be the causes, the fact remained that the rebels lost this battle. However, their bravery, their tactical acumen was recognized by the British themselves, and the London Illustrated London Gazette of the time uh, brought out a report on this battle, where it termed this battle as the opposing forces going bayonet to bayonet. Now, the reason for both the defeat at Badali Ki Sarai as also as Nadavgarh were two. One was the leadership. Now, the rebels, in their own way, were very brave. They knew their job. However, they knew their job at their level. That is, the sepoy knew how to fight bravely. Their Risaldars and Subedars knew how to lead their platoons efficiently and bravely. However, they had no experience of conducting operations at a level beyond a company. Consequently, they failed in deploying the resources optimally. And on the other hand, the British, who were led by the officers who had long experience at conducting campaigns and were logistically better placed. Now, the month of August, September, that is end August to third week of September, the Battle of Delhi had carried on with great violence and tenacity on both the sides. The sepoy had fought for every inch. However, over a period of time, the balance of forces had turned irrevocably in favor of the British, and by about 20th September, Delhi had become a lost cause, and the rebels had left for their respective areas. By middle of October, the British were able to bring Delhi and the surrounding areas under their control. They had reoccupied Gurgaon, had taken Rewari without a fight, had gone on to capture Dadri, and from there they turned towards Jhajjar. The Nawab met them midway and surrendered. Similarly, they were able to get hold of Raja Nahar Singh. Hence, the battle for the rebels was more or less over in and around Delhi by middle of October 1857. However, at this time, Abdul Samad Khan refused to surrender, and he, with his group, moved south to join up with Jodhpur Legion. Now, before we go forward, let me say something about Jodhpur Legion. Now, these brave hearts, as the name suggests, belong to Jodhpur Legion, which was located in Ernipura in the Jodhpur state. However, it did not have troops from Rajasthan or, for that matter, Jodhpur. It was composed of two parts: infantry part of 11 companies, of which 3 were of Bhils and 8 were of mainly Purabiya, Brahmins and Rajputs, with a sprinkling of Jats and other castes from Ganga Doab and Haryana. The cavalry element consists of 3 squadrons, all 3 made up of troops recruited from Haryana and Ganga Doab, that is the Ranghards of Haryana, Hindustani Musliman of Ganga Doab, the Jats, and Rajputs. This force had rebelled at the beginning in the September, and had three engagements with the British. Uh, in all three, it had prevailed over the enemy. Hence, it was undefeated at end of September when they came to know of Delhi having fallen to the British. It is at this stage that the leadership of this force decided to measure themselves against the British and converted themselves from the Jodhpur legend to Fauj-e-Shahidan. Fauj-e-Shahidan, yani, in other words, army of martyrs. To conduct their administrative affairs, they put themselves under a panchayat. This panchayat was led by General Meherban Singh, who was the military commander of this force, and included Subedar Gojan Singh and Jamedar Arju Dev of infantry, as also Risaldar Ahmad Ali of cavalry. Now, in the Battle of Narnaul, they were joined about 250 sawars under command of Abdul Samad Khan, that is the Jhajjar Lancers, and there was a mixed contingent coming down from Hasi, led by Muhammad Azim, which included people from around Hisar, Hasi, as also Sawars and Sipais of 1st Irregular Cavalry, Haryana Light Infantry, which had rebelled at Hasi. And some locals, like 10-15 men led by Kisan Gopal of Nangli Pathana, and about 200 remnants of 3rd Cavalry, 4th Irregular Cavalry, the local mayors and Rangats. They were faced by the British force, which was thrice their size, included a European battalion called 1st Fusiliers, contingent of guides, cavalry, infantry, 2 squadrons of carbiners, Multani horse, horse artillery, Haryana Field Force, which included 23rd Punjab and troop of 6-pounder guns, Punjab contingent that included Patiala infantry and Punjab armed forces, and irregulars, that is Isakhel horse and Tohana horse. So on one side were rebels, about 1200, on the other side were the British, around 3500. As I already brought out, the Jodhpur legend was a force raised to protect Raja of Jodhpur, and it had rebelled at Arnipura. In end October, they decided to move up from Jodhpur towards Delhi. They took the route from Arnipura to Pali, Ajmer, through Sikar to reach Mahendragarh, that was called Kannauj in those days. In the area of Sikar, they were challenged by Rao Bhairav Sikh, who was Thikanedar of Sikar, on the orders of Jaipur Raja. They defeated the Jodhpur legion, meted a conclusive defeat to this Thikanedar, and the Jaipur forces fled. At the beginning of November, this force had arrived at Kannauj, and the British had come to know of its location. They had organized a field force under command of Colonel Gerard to intercept this force. And these two forces met at Narnaul. That is where the battle took place. At Narnaul, the rebels had arrived earlier and taken up main position centered on the town of Narnaul. To give early warning to this main location, they had placed mobile elements, that is the cavalry, ahead, and the post at Nasipur was held by Jhajjar Lancers. On the fateful day of 17th November, it so happened that the actual detachment of about 4-5 sawars who were located at Nasipur were surprised by the British and fell back. And this resulted in Abdul Samad Khan launching a counterattack to regain the position. This counterattack was pushed in with such vigor and violence that the Punjabi troops who had taken this position, including Patiala infantry, Isakhel horse, Tohana horse, and Multani horse, panicked and started running away. However, General Gerard was an experienced military leader, and reading the battle correctly, he launched his reserves of guides and cavalry at the right time, who were able to thereby bring the Jhajjar Lancers, led by Samad Khan, between two British forces. And this led to subsequent loss of space for maneuver for Abdul Samad Khan's force, and they had to withdraw from here. The British would go on to launch attacks on Narnaul, and finally, after a battle lasting for entire day and night, they were able to take the town. However, not before they were given a severe beating, and the fight was led with such vigor that it resulted in heavy officer casualties among the British. This is one of the markers in any battle as to how many number of officers die. More severe the battle, more the officer has to be right in front, more likely that he'll become a casualty. And here they not only became casualty, one of the officers was given a Victoria Cross by the British in this battle. Abdul Samad Khan, I can't say for sure whether he died here because his body wasn't recovered, but nothing was heard about him. Insofar as Jodhpur Legion is concerned, having given a measure of their bravery to the British, after the battle they dispersed. The largest column was reported, followed by the British spies, and they crossed Jamuna and naturally headed towards their respective native places. The cavalry element, which was mainly made up of people from Haryana, dispersed to their respective villages. Here it's important to note the functioning of the panchayat, which I had talked of, which was administratively in charge of the Jodhpur Legion and the fort. At Narnaul, they write letters to Raja of Alwar and so on, asking them to join up, but none of them responds. So this is where the last hurrah of Battle of Delhi during the rebellion of 1857 was. Insofar as Jhajjar town itself is concerned, it was looted over 2 days. Total loot which was deposited with the treasury included 37 lakh rupee in cash and jewelry and certain objects of art. As I told you, Nawab was a patron of art. But the town was looted by this Haryana Field Force and the 9th Lancers, who were notorious. These people were notorious for carrying out loot, pillage, and rapes during that period. However, that we aim of this episode was to bring home the bravery, the steadfastness of the Jhajjar forces during the rebellion of 1857. Thank you. Jai Hind.